Hello, my name is Richard Hudson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Science Business, a media company based in Brussels. And I'd like to welcome you to this discussion on what is a very important topic for research and innovation around Europe, specifically the public-private partnerships that are an essential feature of Horizon 2020 and the entire strategy of the European Framework Program since the very beginning in 1984. The basic idea has always been that you bring together innovators in the private sector with the researchers and the public policy people in the public sector, and you create things together to make Europe stronger, more competitive, healthier, greener, et cetera, et cetera. This discussion, however, is somewhat paradoxically called, we've called it marriage counseling, simply because, as you can imagine, if you bring together such a diverse group of players, you're going to have conflicts and you're going to have problems that arise that need to be solved. This entire strategy, one issue that's been raised is that is this research strategy or innovation policy, or is this industrial policy that we're talking about? A related question is, how efficient are these partnerships? A few years ago in the Parliament, the European Parliament, there was a report that was issued that actually questioned the rationale for these. But on the other hand, the Commission, in its planning for the next framework program, Horizon Europe, which starts in January, has been making a great effort to create a new crop of these. It's planning to make the partnerships at the moment, by the way, I should say, there's more than 100 of them, of different sizes, different legal bases, different industrial sectors that are involved. Their objective is to rationalize them, to bring them together where it makes sense so that they are larger and have more impact. And also, of course, to add some new topics, remove some old ones, etc. So there's a recycling, a redo of the entire strategy. So that's what we're going to talk about. These projects involve thousands and thousands of companies and universities and research institutes across the EU. They are a core part of what Europe does in its research and innovation. So to discuss this, I'm delighted to be joined with first a member of the European Parliament, Maria de Graça Carvalho. She is from Portugal. She is a member of the European People's Party, which is the center-right group in the Parliament. And more significantly for this discussion, she is also one of the rapporteurs on some key Horizon legislation, specifically in her case on what happens with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. She also has a great deal of experience in these subjects through years, both in the Portuguese government and in the Commission. I'm also joined, she, by the way, I should say, is in Lisbon right now. I'm also joined by, on the other side of, you might say, the institutions, Michael Kozlovs. He is a member of the European Court of Auditors, which, as the name implies, its responsibility is auditing the programs of the European Commission and Union, including some of these partnerships. And the ECA has published a number of reports on these issues that he'll be, on these partnerships that he'll be talking about. Michael is with us from Luxembourg. In addition, we're joined by Magda Glebus. Magda is the Executive Director for Science Policy and Regulatory Affairs at EFPIA, which is the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industry Associations. Magda, I hope I said that right. She is also, and the reason why she is here with us, she is also at the core of one of the largest of these public-private partnerships called the Innovative Medicines Initiatives, which she will tell us about shortly. And lastly, we are joined also by Nicolas Brahi. He's the director of Hydrogen Europe. Hydrogen, as those of you who have been watching the news lately, is suddenly, well, not suddenly, he would say, but extremely topical. It is what the research and innovation in the field of hydrogen, clean hydrogen for power and other applications is a critical part of the Green New Deal, that the Green Deal that the Commission is now proposing. And Nicola will tell us about their existing partnership and what is to come. So these are the speakers. I have just said who you are, but Magda, let me start with you. Tell us a little bit more about what is the Innovative Medicines Initiatives and what are you doing with it?
Thank you, Richard. So the Innovative Medicines Initiative is probably the largest public-private partnership in biomedical research worldwide. It's not just Europe, it's really worldwide. Europe has pioneered this new way of bringing competitors, many companies together, bringing them around the table, helping them to define a pre-competitive space, and then in collaboration with best scientists from Europe, from academia, from the regulatory authorities, health authorities, to together define problems and accelerate translation of ideas into medical solutions that would reach the patients much faster, optimize research, optimize development, and make sure that research delivers better quality to the patients and to healthcare systems. And IMI does that in a way that it brings, on the one hand, together the companies, on the other hand, it launches calls for projects where the public partners come, apply, and then are married. I very much like this marriage counseling title, marry public and private partners and make them to work together by bringing their best brains, best assets that otherwise would not be shared, and together collaborate. It's not co-funding, it's collaboration and developing together these new tools. What are they? Infrastructures, research tools, methodologies, standards, and sometimes products. And my role in FPA, the research-based pharmaceutical industry, is to bring industry together and create the best possible ideas for projects, but also make companies to contribute adequately to those large-scale initiatives.
Magda, can you just give us a few examples of specific topics that have been researched under IMI?
Of course. Most recently, we have launched a project about COVID, for example, to accelerate discovery, to bring libraries of many companies and screen them in order to identify the compounds. We have done projects on creating infrastructure for discovery. The European Lead Factory, one of the biggest infrastructures of this kind. We are today doing projects about optimizing clinical trials, where rather than doing clinical trials, each company in their own silo, to bring companies together and to run trials in parallel in a basket. Something
for what kinds of diseases? For what kinds of diseases are these trials?
So IMI goes through all therapeutic areas, from neurodegeneration, antimicrobial resistance, diabetes. A lot of the IMI funding was spent on infectious diseases, but the other biggest area is neurodegeneration, diabetes, but also safety and big data and everything that is related to better exploitation of data and knowledge in science.
Okay, all right. So we'll come back to this in just a moment in some more detail. But Nicolas, if I may turn to you now, tell us about Hydrogen Europe and the partnerships, the partnership that you currently have.
Yeah, so our partnership has a number of things in common with IMI and a number of things which are a bit different, which are due to the fact that the pharmaceutical sector existed and was already a very solid sector before the partnership was created, while actually the hydrogen sector was not at such a sector, but a series of small companies scattered in many sectors. And in addition to doing things which are in common with IMI, which is to bring together all the industrial actors and the research sector to try to define priorities and guide the Commission. in defining where the funding should go. The partnership has had this particular effect to create a sector. So I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, nobody thought that there would be a hydrogen sector. There was a number of people dealing with an electrolyzer, with a fuel cell, a few technologies, some of them in a kind of small research center into a car company, some other one in an oil and gas company, and another one in a startup. But these people didn't know that they were part of something common, which was an hydrogen sector, which was supposed to become a key part of the decarbonization of Europe. And I think the partnership has had this capacity to bring these scattered and forward-looking actors together to tell them, you are an emerging sector, you need to work together and you need to define together what you want to do to become a big and useful sector. And I really believe that the partnership, in addition to all its rationale of funding research and trying to identify where to fund research, has create and structure an ecosystem. And actually the association I represent, Hydrogen Europe, is somewhere at the origin of the partnership, but is also the result of the partnership, because when we started, there was 50 companies meetings occasionally to discuss, and now we are 200 companies, including very large companies, and we meet on a daily basis. We discuss about business while continuing to discuss about research for the future.
Okay, Nicolas, this is a really naive question, but I'll ask it. What, hydrogen? Give us some examples of what it is, the specific research that's happening.
But before discussing about research, you need one word or two about hydrogen. So we come from a world where 80% of our energy is coming from fossil fuel. And we want to go to a world where 80% of our energy will come from renewable resources if you want to decarbonize Europe. If you produce renewable energy, most of it starts as electricity. That's a good news because you can electrify many things and you can reduce drastically the emissions. But you cannot electrify everything because it's difficult to transport electricity. It is very difficult to store electricity for long duration. And there are a number of end-use applications, moving a huge truck, melting iron ore to make steel, and all this kind of thing that you cannot do always with electricity. And hydrogen is the way to convey renewables everywhere where pure electricity through wires or battery cannot go. This is the challenge. So it's about replacing part of oil, part of gas, part of coal in different sectors. And in order to do that, but you need to work on three pillars. One is the production of hydrogen, and you have different technologies for doing that, but the most promising one is the electrolyzer, which basically transforms water and electricity into hydrogen. And you have then a new pillar, which is the transport and distribution. You need to transport vast quantities of hydrogen from one place. For example, when you have cheap solar energy in Spain, where you need to use it, which is, for example, in a steel factory in Germany. You need to store it because it may not necessarily be produced at the moment where you need it. And you know that renewables cannot be switched on and off as we want. And then you have all the end users where you may need a fuel cell to transform it back into electricity in a vehicle, in a car, for example, or in a bus or in a truck, or other device that can transform it as part of the heavy industry. There are many devices which are made of.
Okay. Okay. All right. So again, we will come back into this in more detail. I'll switch now to Graça. Graça, you in the Parliament. As I said before, there's a wide range of partnerships here. You are currently dealing not mostly, but most intensively with a particular one, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's happening with that? But you also have a perspective on all the partnerships.
And thank you very much, Richard, and thanks for the organization to have invited me to this panel. Actually, I was quite happy because I follow the partnerships almost from the beginning. I remember they were the follow-up of the technology platforms. And actually one of the first ones was exactly the hydrogen during the President Prodi, that was very enthusiastic on hydrogen. And in 2004, I was minister, and when he launched the idea of the first platform that was after gave to the commission has started working on in this idea of the partnerships that came out in 2007 to be a reality. But the first idea was in a big meeting in 2004. He invited me to as a minister. I was minister at the time, to talk in name of the member states. And I remember very well, was an important meeting where this idea of the public-private partnership as a more sustainable long-term the example was exactly the hydrogen. After, in 2007, during a Portuguese presence, I was at the time principal advisor of President Barroso. We launched the whole geometry that gave rise to the first package on public and trips, and in 2008, during the Slovenian presidency, exactly the hydrogen was launched. So I know quite well the advantage. I have been very enthusiastic about this, but I also know what needs to be improved, and this is a lot of points that really needs to be improved in the partnerships, in different ones, because as you said, we have the public-private that is based on the Article 187 of the treaty, that are industry and commission mainly, and you have the public-to-public based on Article 185 that has co-decision, that is heavier to decide and more complex, but there has some advantage, but also some disadvantage on the complexity of the system. I also know this one very well because the one of the first was the EBCTP, AIDS, Malaria, and Tuberculosis, and I was also minister when this was joined, when this was launched, with a lot of interest from Mozambique, where the problems of malaria, AIDS, and tuberculosis is.
Yeah, that's
now it's going to be transformed. Yeah,
that's drug development in Africa.
Yeah. Now it's going to be transformed in a public to private, as we heard, more global health in Africa, but has been a very interesting collaboration. So just to tell you, I've followed quite close also as a rapporteur of Horizon 2020 of the specific agenda. I followed it very close. And it's true that the Parliament supports, and we have voted always positive, but there is questions to the openness, the transparency, the participation, the geographical coverage, the session from less intensive research countries, or more countries that are more peripheric, that have less access to information, how they participate less, and we want to improve that. Also, smaller institutions participate less, and we also want to improve, but we have time to discuss it later. As far as the IT, has some of the positive and also suffers from one of these points that I have just mentioned. So the EIT is the only one that combines the knowledge triangle, so has higher education, so it has education, research, and innovation. So it's a very interesting mechanism, is an institute that has, after is organized in knowledge innovation communities. Each knowledge innovation community is considered a partnership. Already exists 8 partnerships, and now myself and my colleague Marisa Matias, we are both rapporteurs. She's the regulation, I'm on the specific agenda, and we have finished the report. We have voted in Parliament. We are now negotiating with the German presidency, and our main points to improve is exactly to have a more balanced European Institute of Technology, with more information, with better participation, and also to have 2 new kicks. There is already 8 kicks, and we are proposing 2 new kicks, one on culture and creative sectors, and the second one on water.
Okay,
and I can explain better the change that we are proposing.
Yes. Okay. Lastly, Michaels, you're, as I said, with the European Court of Auditors. You're a member of the court. Why are we talking with you about partnerships?
That's very thank you, Richard. That's very interesting question. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers exactly for acknowledging the role of the Court of Auditors in this setting, because I would say we are somewhere in the shadows, but we are present with our work and with its results. And I'm sure that both Grasa and Nicolas, I guess they might be more aware with what we do than other two colleagues on the panel, but still I'm sure all of you faced auditors from the court once in a while. Exactly. I mean, there is sometimes a perception that that auditors can hardly contribute to a process or to a project, because they focus too much on negative things. They sometimes present their findings in a robust way. But I would like to make a point that actually by doing so, by drawing attention of the policy and decision makers to the inefficiencies, to the difficulties, and some of them were already mentioned by other panelists, they actually call for sound financial management, as we call it, and these normally, as time goes by, enhances implementation of policies and various initiatives. Exactly, from the court's perspective, we talk now about partnerships in Horizon in Horizon 2020. This is financed through budget category 1A in the European budget, and here the European Court of Auditors is responsible for the audit of the joint undertakings. Contractual partnerships are not in our remit. So I will focus.
Because I should say to the audience, the joint undertakings is one of the flavors of partnership.
Yeah.
And it's a rather complicated one.
Sure. It is complicated. I mean, different participants, different legal and statutory schemes. So we do at this point of time regular annual audits of eight joint undertakings. I think what's important to mention, just by way of introduction, we perform basically three types of audits. Financial audit, basically the accounts, whether the accounting is correct, where the accounts of these joint undertakings represent true and fair value of the actual situation. We perform also compliance audit. Compliance is a bit more sophisticated, where we check where the expenditure, where the payments is in line with applicable legislation. First of all, with the EU treaty, that's a bit higher level, but there are for each policy area, there are implemented regulations, guidelines, and so on. So we check whether the expenditure is in line with all these regulations. And there are also horizontal laws in the European Union, like for example, public procurement. Yeah, and I think this. Public procurement is one of the areas we also work from the compliance perspective. And last but not the least, and I would say even maybe most complex type of audit that we are doing is actually performance audit, where we try to assess whether the objectives of funding from EU budget to these specific undertakings have been achieved. And this is one of the, I would say, most difficult tasks. For various reasons, I might speak about them later. But I think this is something that is important also for the policymakers, because I may say in very general terms that from the financial and compliance point of view, we don't discover, many sexy things, I would say, because at this point in time, obviously, in the European Union, the budgetary management is at a high level. From the performance point of view, we are venturing more and more in this area, and there I think there are several areas where the improvements could be made. And as I said, I might touch upon them in our later discussion. Maybe there's also a question why should we audit? Why? I mean, isn't it enough that the European Commission, through its regular evaluation, delivers this assessment? Here, I would say that the external audit is one of the requirements of the good financial management, and it also has to do with the amount of money that the EU budget actually contributes to each of the joint undertakings. I think in the current financial framework, we talk about almost 7 billion euros that goes to the European joint undertakings. So this is one thing, and also another thing that European Union takes these commitments on a continuous basis. It's a long-term process. So there is a need to monitor also from the taxpayer's point of view that these resources are used in the best possible way. And this is what basically the performance auditing is all about.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now, we are all introduced, but explain to me and the audience. By the way, I should say some questions are starting to come in from the audience, which we will get to. So please do send us your questions. But the question for me is simply, why do we have these partnerships, these public-private partnerships? I mean, surely, particularly the ones that involve multinational companies, why do we do this? Have the Commission involved with engaging them? What's the objective, the purpose of this? Anybody want to go first on that?
I'm happy to start, if you allow me. And I think, especially in the health area, but in any other area, I would suggest COVID more than ever had shown that we need to achieve three things. We need to have a resilient and strong European research ecosystem in order to speed the translation of ideas into products, into impact, and to have that impact. So these are the three things. And when I say strong ecosystem and acceleration, ecosystem means everybody in the ecosystem, including industries of various sizes, small, big, including academia, including decision makers. And that requires a safe harbor. This has not been achieved through other instruments. This has been achieved through partnerships, because some of these relationships have only been tried for the first time in the context of those partnerships. And when I say have been tried, it's at scale.
Magda, wait a minute. You use the term, they need a safe harbor. What do you mean?
I mean a place where you can bring, for example, competitors who are not used of working together, who compete with each other, and to whom you create an environment in which they can, in a trustful, managed way, come together and to say, okay, on these topics, we are not competitors. We would be collaborating in order to stop failing. But at the same time, where we as competitors would not only agree amongst each other, but would say we would expose our vulnerability, lack of knowledge, lack of science, and then open that collaboration to others. I should say that as far as IMI is concerned, before we've created this partnership, companies would not work together on topics like let's do discovery together or let's do development together. That was just simply not happening. We've pioneered that, and now this becomes part of the culture. So in order to have this real ecosystem, accelerate translation, which would not happen if one of the players in the ecosystem is not there. If you miss academia, if you miss regulators, if you miss industry, if you miss patients, in our ecosystem, things would not be accelerated, would simply not happen. For that, you need a place where we can play together. Play in the positive sense of the word, and where the interests are managed, where the interests of public and private, of healthcare systems, patients, and research imperatives can be managed and brought together. And Magda, that's what these partnerships have done.
Magda, elsewhere in the world, are there programs like this?
They didn't exist when IMI is created, and not during the first 10 years. I think COVID has accelerated a lot of this. Now people are actually trying to mimic that and do it, but to the scale and to the way that IMI and the European Commission was able to facilitate, that it's still today unprecedented. And we are really very proud of that we were able to show the way. And even though there are problems, I'm not claiming that everything is perfect, at least we are making the steps that nobody else was brave enough to take. Japan, US, China, they do not have this type of partnerships yet, but they are coming. So we should be careful not to lose that.
So the creation of an ecosystem, the safe harbor that you mentioned to permit this. Well, why the rest of you? Why are we doing these?
Can I? I think that I fully agree what was said, and I would add that is implicit, but I would like to stress is the long term and the sustainability of the project. So it gives the guarantee that it doesn't stop in 3 years, because until now we had in the FP6-7 horizon 3-year projects, probably with some extension of 6 months, but not more than that. You don't know what happens after. There, it gives a guarantee at least of 7 years and the continuation that the industry will invest, because there is a long-term perspective. That it makes also a lot of difference. After the rules of the governance, as was it said, is adapt to make sure that industry has an important say. So that was not possible under the general rules of the framework program, for example, on Horizon 2020. Another point is that make possible to increase the critical mass of funding. So it's much easier to put together the private funding with the European Commission, with member states, now some of them with other organizations like foundations and NGOs. So the rules are done so that we increase the pot that is available for that research. So this makes it's very important for areas like health, for areas like aeronautics, that only with a critical mass and sustainable and long term and a large budget, we can achieve some results and be competitive towards other parts of the world. And this is another absolute novelty, was a nice, good innovation from Europe. That now some others are just now trying to also to do the same, especially with COVID.
Okay, so long-term nature and the critical mass of money and players. Okay, Nicola, why use this? Again, many of the 50 companies that you talked about that are part of your partnership could do this themselves, surely. So why? What's the objective of doing it together in this way?
But first of all, let's go first to the rationale of public funding research. So why do we do public funding research, and what are the difficulties of public funding for research? So we do public funding of research because we realize that if there was no taxation of people and reinjection of money in research, private entity would not invest enough in research innovation, or probably not everywhere. There were some places where the return on investment is too short, too unsecure, or too long term, that they would not invest. This is why we tax people and we entrust the public authorities to allocate money to fill these gaps. But the challenge is that civil servants, whatever their level of intelligence and knowledge, don't know exactly where to put the money.
That's a shocking admission. Oh my goodness.
So, but this is the rationale of public research, but it's also the rationale of a public-private partnership. So when you're a civil servant or a politician, you need to invest in detailed money for research. You don't know what to do. So what do? You need to consult people. And actually, I would like to attack the myth that these partnerships are a club of secret industry. To the contrary, when you are in a partnership, you know who, you bring all the industry together, you force them to make a multi-annual research agenda for 7 years. You need to force them to create a process where they will invest all stakeholders to work to prepare the annual priorities. This is transparent and this is guided by the best people in the sector. If not, you have a civil servant which pick his phone and consult some friends. And that's how it is done because he doesn't know what to do. So I tend to believe that partnerships are much more transparent and actually give a better steer in where the money should go than when you have no partnership.
I should add, Nicolas, we should add perhaps for the audience that you used to be in the commission.
Yeah.
So you dealt with this problem.
I have been a civil servant trying to be smart and struggling to find good ideas, yes. The other national thing is this idea of safe harbor or this idea of a long-term commitment. Two things on this. Let's remember that in FP6, there was an observation that big companies were less and less interested in entering into the framework program because they say it is a huge bureaucracy. Usually we are not very much like, everybody prefers research and SMEs, and there is a constant change of priorities. With a partnership, you say, we make a forced marriage, as you say, a long-term marriage with a sector. You agree on an agenda and you fix a budget for 7 years. Can I tell you that from any envelope of a framework program, the only envelope which has never been changed over 7 years is the one of a GTI or joint undertaking. All the other envelopes, the Commission is selling the money 3 times. They sell the money at the beginning of the framework program, they reallocate in the middle, and they reallocate at 3/4. The only place where it was never changed, it was, what does it mean? It means that when you're in a company, when you're a big research center, you don't spend your time lobbying for your priority. It is pre-agreed for 7 years. You can try to focus your energy on finding the best topic for research and not fighting for getting money.
Well, okay, Nicolas, but wait a minute. Yeah, okay, you said you don't spend your time lobbying for the money, but during the program. But what does happen is that the industry does lobby for the creation of the joint undertakings, and that's where some of the criticism has arisen.
Yes, true, completely true. Yes, I'm lobbying to try to have a partnership on hydrogen, but it's public. It's public. Every correspondence that I write to the Commission can be accessed by access to document regulation, and it will go through the Parliament and it will go through the Council, which will judge on whether the partnership is valid or not.
Okay, but Michals, before we come to you, let me just read one of the questions that came in because it's very trenchantly written, I should say. So I'll give it to you unvarnished. Okay, so according to many in DGRTD, money spent on these partnerships is wasted money because it places industry in a comfortable place. They do not have to invest their own money rather than public money, in spite of the fact that they have to contribute, but less than in the absolute, et cetera, et cetera. So they are redistributing profit. So that's
more than happy to answer.
So what do you think? All of you, what do you think of that?
Can I be provocative 1 second?
Yeah.
The job of people working in DGRTD, and I've been one of them, so I include myself, and I work in this, is only justified if you think it's a very pretentious job, in fact, because you are taxing people and saying, we public authorities know better where the money should go. So you tax people and you give it to researchers, but also to big companies so that they invest in places where they would not go if they were only submitted to the market forces. So if they question this, fine, but they question their very existence.
I'd like to add to that, and I wouldn't be as maybe provocative as is Nicola, but I would like to highlight this. What he said is very true. People question the value of those partnerships, not necessarily understanding that this is, when we say public-private partnership, is co-investment as well. And there is a huge value in that. You know, in IMI, we have co-funded, co-invested 2.5 billion euro, or committed to co-invest 2.5 billion euro over 14 years. And same amount is co-invested by the European Commission. So, you know, this safe harbor where such an investment is made is really very important. We are maintaining companies' interest in spending their initiatives, spending their resources on collaborating with European best scientists in order to drive through Europe fantastic programs. So it is not that, you know, suddenly we are stealing money out of collaborative research. If Europe wants to be strong, resilient, sustainable, as COVID has today shown, we need industries, as Nicola said before, and we need their investments. This is exactly what these partnerships are doing. And we need to attract those industries. So if we call into question the value of public-private collaboration, we question the ability of Europe to have that strong public-private ecosystem, research ecosystem, and deliver better value to European research and to European patients and to European citizens. So I think we would never convince those who think that public-private collaboration is evil. But I would just like to say, people shouldn't think that in European joint undertakings, money just flows in one direction. In IMI, industry is receiving €0. We are all investing. But even where industry is receiving money, companies are investing. They are investing their resources. They are often investing their money.
Let me stop you there for just a second. So how does this work in IMI, the money? How does that work?
So in IMI, you bring companies together. They define what they are going together to bring in terms of work, assets, labs, people, and the value of that is matched by the European Commission. And this matching funding goes only to universities, small and medium-sized enterprises, etc. None of that money comes to the big companies. But you know, there are partnerships where the money goes to companies, and that's also fine. And this is also very valuable. But in IMI, the value of the work done by industry is matched by the European Commission with that funding goes as grants to public partners only. And that brings together 2.5 billion euro from the European Commission, 2.5 billion euro from the industries, all companies and some of our other partners.
Okay.
If I may chip in very briefly, Richard, on basically why we have partnerships, I think many things that our panelists said boil down to this concept of the European value added. There are many policy areas, and their number is, I would say, is gradually increasing as time goes by, where experience shows that EU is better or can better achieve this objective doing them together than separately. If you take, for example, defense, it's a new priority, and we saw that you know, acting at the European level might bring better results in the economics and finance. Also, the whole Eurozone project, you know, is about this European value added. So I think this concept is key also for research, because research in each and every individual member state also, I mean, with all due respect to the European research, probably would not be able to match, to compete on equal footing with I know, US, China, Japan, and so on. So I think this concept is important. I think Rasa mentioned this idea of bringing into the picture those areas of Europe where this research excellence is not yet there. Yeah, and this is again one of the objectives of doing research together jointly. So I would probably not agree with the idea that the money is being wasted. We found in our work a couple of times that private sector, you know, was at times a bit late with their cash contributions. This is what I found. Not major amounts, but still these can happen. Yeah, but then that's a task of the commission to basically make sure that.
Wait a minute. What do you mean late with their cash contributions? That is to say, they promised in the deal they were going to put a certain amount of effort.
Yes. So it doesn't mean that they don't pay, but they might be paying late and so on, and this already might have negative impact on the whole project. So and as I said, this might be then the task of the commission to make sure that this actually happens. And obviously there are issues. I think it is understandable to understand how to better monetize these in-kind contributions to make sure that they accounted for in the right way. Yeah, and this is a challenge that we are also looking at in our work.
So this is what. So, Michal, actually, if we could, Gasa, we'll come to you in a moment. But Michal, if you could perhaps give us an overview of what the problems are. So, in your reviews of partnerships, are there consistent problems that you find?
Well, I wouldn't say there are kind of consistent problems, but I mean, maybe we could come to this point later, because I have a small visual for that.
Well, go ahead, show us now.
Probably I would show you. I would share with you my screen here.
Yeah.
Because they are.
We see it.
You see now. I changed the slide. Yeah. Basically, these are the main risks as we identify them. Yeah, and these risks, as you say, as you see, they.
Full screen?
Sorry.
Can you put it in full screens?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let me see. 1 second. Yeah, maybe not to. Yeah, it's there.
There we go.
So I mean, you see them in this brief visual. We have various risks associated with the participants with respect to leverage. Sometimes the leverage objective is too high, set too high, and cannot be achieved. Obviously, alignment and complementarities is a broad risk. Then we have exploitation of research.
What do you mean alignment and complement? What does that mean?
I mean, when in partnership you have various partners, they have to have alignment. Alignment of interest first of all, and the effort should be complementary, not actually duplicating. And from our risk analysis, we saw that this might be the case.
Does it happen? Is it the case?
Well, you might ask maybe colleagues from partnerships, do they see any the risk of that kind? Finally, obviously, the achievement of research objectives. It is very difficult to assess because the projects are long-term. This performance metric is not yet always well developed. So it's difficult both for the Commission when they contract independent evaluations, and also for us from the Court of Auditors to actually understand whether the value for money has been delivered. Yeah. So this is a very broad presentation of the risks we identified, we found through our work in the last couple of years. But it would be really very interesting to see what other panelists think on those risks.
Again, Michal, you say those are risks, but in the audits that you have performed, either for any of the three types of audits that you get to, have you actually found that that any of these are a problem?
Some of them, yes. I could give you maybe a couple of examples.
Okay.
A couple of examples from one of the, I would probably not name, the joint undertaking, but the things you see on the slide, they are at a high kind of aggregated level.
Yeah.
At a more specific level, for example, what we saw in one of the joint undertaking was that substantial amount of funds was awarded without adequate prioritization. EU funded projects
without adequate prioritization.
Without adequate prioritization, yeah.
You mean they didn't make clear why they were giving the money for?
Yes, yes. This is a common. This is a common issue in such projects. Then another finding we have is that in the current funding mechanisms, they require basically some beneficiaries to be present, to be involved in the screening of their own applications. Yeah. So this kind of might be a conflict of interest, and in this particular case, we identified it and we reported it to the Parliament. So this is just to give you a couple of examples what it means, in practice.
Well, another issue that was raised, I remember there was the ECA, I think it was a couple of years ago, had a report on one partnership. I'm trying to remember the details, but in any case, there was a main top level point was that the ECA was saying that the partnership rules and accounting were so complicated that people made mistakes, not necessarily intentionally, but because they're mistakes. But the complexity of the joint undertakings and other things was itself a problem. Is that still true?
Well, I think here we should balance these things, because on the one hand we want to involve we want to marry, as the title of our panel says, we want to marry a public and private sector, and this marriage, by the way, means that it's not simple, because
you need a prenup.
Sorry?
You need a prenuptial agreement.
Yeah. You need a lot of innovation to make sure that this works also from the government perspective. And as you see, if you look at the funding structure, you have member states, you have the EU budget, and you have the private sector. All of these players, they have different interests, they have different objectives. Some of the colleagues already mentioned this. So but I think to make this all work, we have to make an effort and make sure that these governance mechanisms actually work. And the work of the Code of Auditors is actually one of the contributing factors, where we draw attention on the things I have mentioned. We report, that's what I didn't say in the beginning. Basically, what happens with our reports, we report our findings to the Parliament and to the Council, obviously within the presence of the Commission and the respective joint undertaking, and then basically there is this decision what to do, how to resolve this particular problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you've just listed then a series of potential problems and also real ones that you have encountered in the process of this. But just to put this in perspective, what's the error rates that you find in these partnerships? I mean, in other words, how serious are problems?
Well, yeah, we are now going a bit too technical. I mean, the error rate, we don't calculate error rate in for specific specific joint undertaking, specific entities. We calculate error rate for research as a whole, for the whole budgetary heading 1A, and there this error rate actually fluctuates around 4%.
4%.
Which around 4%, where our materiality level is 2%. So when it's higher than 2%, we normally report that this is as a negative feature.
Do you have the impression that partnerships are above or below that 4% average?
Well, if I reply to this question, it would be just a speculation. Yeah.
Okay.
I have the figures. I have the figures. For
yeah. Maybe.
Okay. Go ahead. By the way, can you Michals, can you unshare your screen?
Yes, sure.
Maybe you can. I'd like to comment on some of that,
too.
and I think that it's really fantastic to see the Court of Auditors involved and looking at performance and impact, etc. And I'm serious. I'm really honest about it, because I think that if we don't have that level of scrutiny and dialogue, there is no way to improve. Somebody needs to have a look. Somebody needs to scrutinize, and then we can improve. I think some of the risks that you've shown have been dealt with and would be dealt with in the future, in the current partnerships and in the future partnerships. It's good that we have that reminder, but I would just like to question whether we need to look at the usefulness and impact of those partnerships through the error rate, because I'm sorry, the reality is that two worlds are meeting. In the Commission, in the European Union, in the public sector, you plan multi-annually through annuality, and this is how you function. And your objective is to spend the money as effectively as possible. In industry, you have much more flexibility in the way you approach the budget and budgeting cycle. So even that, we look at budgets in a completely different way. Does that mean that it's wrong? No. Does that mean that we need to align and meet somewhere in the middle? Yes. Does that question the value of the partnerships? Not. And you've said that very well. These are risks. We need to address them, and we need to address them together. So I would just like us not to get lost into error rates and accountability issues, because this is not the value of those partnerships. I liked your point about duplication and the fact that you've asked, is there real duplication? So it's very difficult to find where the duplication is. If you look at the topics only, at the names on the face of it, you may say collaborative research and partnerships are doing the same things. But the reality is that you do that in a different environment, you do a different facet. So I'll give you an example. You do a project in collaborative research on tuberculosis. In EDCTP, you would do clinical trials in Africa. In IMI, we would do modernization of clinical trials and to see how public and private can optimize clinical trials. So not running clinical trials in Africa, but looking at the methodology. Collaborative research is looking at how to identify resistant tuberculosis. So tuberculosis is the common feature. But then each of these tools is addressing another facet of it. And altogether...
I should add, Magda, just to explain to the audience, what you refer to as collaborative research is the normal...
The normal research that the Commission is funding through calls for interest. So I would just like to say, from the 5 risks that you've identified, rightly so, we need to be super vigilant on that. Duplication is probably where we need to look at things differently. We need to see what is the value of a given instrument in addressing one particular facet of a problem, and we are doing that. In terms of complexity, I would say that for me, trying to put a ball in a square hole is a difficulty, and that's where we are. What we have, we try to harmonize all instruments and make them same and harmonized and aligned. And that's where we sometimes lack flexibility to adjust, to adapt, and to make sure that these partnerships that are supposed to attract different people and different organizations can actually deliver. So for me, the problem that we have beyond the ones that you mentioned as risks is lack of flexibility. The system is really very, very rigid. Trying to standardize everything across the board is really complicated. And the bureaucracy today is still disproportionate. And I think that's what we all deal with today in terms of difficulties.
Gasta, let me come to you.
I want to follow up what Michalis has said. And actually, to say that a lot of our work in the past on the reports from the auditors, as it should be, for example, the EIT, and I have read many of the reports on the partnerships. that were produced. And based on my knowledge from what has been produced in the reports and the many hearings and talking with the researchers and the industry, the things that in my opinion, should be improved and is more or less consensual in the parliament is the question of the duplication. There is here another point that I would like to add, that is a more alignment even with the European policies and with the national and the regional policies. This is not true to all with the same level to all the partnerships, but some of the partnerships are not very much aligned with what is going on in policy making, and they are a bit decoupled from sometimes from the European or from the national and the regional reality. The second point is the dissemination and information. There is not a lot of visibility throughout Europe on these partnerships. We should have more dissemination. After the main problem is the lack of openness, and that is a fact. It's data. If you look at the participation from the 27 member states, if you look at the participation for smaller institutions, and I'm not talking about the ones that are not research intensive, because we have research excellence all over. In aeronautics, you have excellent research in Romanian. But you need to be able to capture that. And most of these partnerships are very concentrated. We need to improve. The framework program suffers from the same, but with a less extent than the partnerships. The partnership degree of concentration is bigger than in the collaborative research. It's more difficult for a researcher to participate.
Are these closed clubs?
Can we answer that?
I don't know if it's if you should call that, but there is not the same degree of with the calls from the GRTD. The researchers and the SMEs, they already know where to look for, how to apply, they know the system. There is a lot of information. It's not the same. They complain about that is not the same degree of information from the partnerships. So we have less participation, less spread participation from the partnerships than we have from the collaborative. So there is an effort to be done on that. The others.
Graça, let me stop you just a second. Nicola is dying to come in on this point. Nicola, go ahead.
Well, this is becoming very lively because we are entering into the real issues. And I would say, actually, to make a point to Michael first, is that the best value of the Court of Auditor from an industry partner in a partnership is that at the end, the Court of Auditor is fact-based and trustworthy. And therefore, only the Court of Auditor can kill false perceptions. And there is this perception of false error rate, that we have a high error rate. Well, I have the figures for the FCAGU. I can tell you that the error rate for the FCAGU has been lower than the one of the Commission every single year since it started. And actually, the Court of Auditor has given a clean opinion on the FCAGU every year, which is an exception. So the Court of Auditor allow me to say that you should be relying on the capacity of a partnership to manage the fund. It's not me saying it, it's them, and that's very useful. And of course, because they are there, the GU invested a lot of energy of being good. And so I'm completely in favor of this. When it comes to the lack of openness, well, let's look at the facts. I have the figures. For the partnership on hydrogen, there are 1,000 beneficiaries. I said that when we started, there was 55 private companies and the same number of research centers. So we had 100 out of 1,000 beneficiaries. Now what has happened is that we have 200 members because a number of beneficiaries have started to be interested enough to say, I don't want to be only a beneficiary. of a project, I want to enter in the industry or the research association, because we have two associations which dedicate time to define the priorities. What are the figures in terms of distribution of money? No, we have 1/4 of beneficiaries that are members, because we have a growing number of members, and 3/4 which are not members. Let's be even tough. Let's go at the allocation of money. True, 15% of the money goes to member, 50% goes to non-member. Is it a right number or a bad number? I don't know, but I give it to you transparent, and it is public. It is on all the report of the GU. I don't find that close. No, we can be a bit more specific. SMEs, the participation is very high. It's much higher than indirect, so it's good. Where it could be better, it's the participation of Central Europe, which is a problem. But let's be honest, this is not a problem of partnership. This is a general problem of Horizon Europe.
No, but
it's
more in the partnerships.
Well,
it's more in partnerships.
I'm happy to check at the numbers, but globally,
is the idea that we have. But that's, we can check on numbers, but it's difficult for countries from the Eastern Europe to enter in partnerships. That is a problem.
No, it is a real problem.
To have access to information.
I mean, it is a real problem. I completely agree, but it's not a problem only of partnership. And if I take the partnership on hydrogen, which I know the best, they have done quite a huge effort to try to change that by organizing big events in many capitals of this. We have made national association of this country members of us, and we have no system of project development assistant to really help them to structure their project before. There is one question that would be raised, is that it is legally forbidden to have call for proposal targeted to some countries. And maybe we should wonder whether we could have called for proposal targeted to these countries.
No, but we don't want to target at countries. We just want that the mechanisms that we have in place, funded by the European budget, are able to capture the excellence where the excellence is. And you have fantastic researchers all over Europe and Eastern countries. So why are not they? Is lack of information, is lack of training how to fill the proposals. It's something that we need to sort it out.
I'm happy to
we need a better balance, not to target, but to help them to have a fair distribution.
Magda, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is really an important matter. But again, I'd like Nicolas to say 100% of funding in IMI is distributed to public partners, and calls are completely open to anyone who wants to apply. So in terms of closed club, I think the accusations have been that it is a closed club of companies that decide on what topics are being launched. And I think that through the involvement of advisory bodies, scientific committee, consultations, we have overcome that part of the accusation of a closed club, because there is, the European Commission, the scientific community can see and help us to prioritize topics. So that was one accusation of closed club. Second was about that the money goes always to the same people. And we have 3,500 public participants in IMI, all of them recruited through a completely independent, open call for expressions of interest that it's exactly the same as the call for expression of interest that is done by the European Commission. It is true, though, that the geographical distribution is not as good, because these partnerships actually look at translational research, not at excellence fundamental science, but translational research. They have slightly different objectives and therefore attract those participants who are already connected in an ecosystem. That's why it is so important to continue investing in the ecosystem beyond those partnerships. But I also agree, Graça, what you've said, we need to look at what topics can attract, what industries can be brought together so that we can resolve that problem of geographical distribution. And just to give you one example from IMI, IMI was all about pharmaceutical industry. Now we are looking, and indeed the distribution of pharmaceutical industry is not equal across Europe, and that created some inequalities in access. Now, if we look at the future public-private partnership we are looking at, we have broadened to all sectors, all health industrial sectors, which are much better distributed across Europe. Those sectors would bring with them those excellent scientists and ecosystems from those countries which are underrepresented. So you are right, but there are solutions. We just need to be super vigilant about it.
So Magda, that means the medical devices and diagnostics and et cetera,
that means medical devices, diagnostics, data, the IT, health IT sector, etc.
Okay, but we've listed a bunch of issues that have arisen, or problems, or whatever you want to call them. And Magda, you just raised the point of Horizon Europe, which is the next big EU research program. From what the Commission has announced so far, and the legislation as it's gone so far through the Parliament, are the next generation of partnerships going to work better? I mean, do we have solutions now to all the problems, or are there other solutions that need to be devised?
So let me start. I really think that we learned from the past, and we are learning all the time. And it is the type of debates like today and tough questions like today and the Court of Auditors and others that help us to improve. That's normal. So I think we are learning, and we are already today within the current partnerships can bring improvements, and we are doing that consistently. Now, Horizon Europe is fantastic and has content-wise has set up a fantastic, ambitious program. I can speak only on the health, of course, research, because I don't know so well the others, but on health, it's absolutely fantastic. Are we going to give ourselves, first, the budget, and second, the flexibility to bring the same and more of companies to help to strengthen that ecosystem? Is Horizon Europe and partnerships, are they going to be attractive enough and flexible enough to accommodate bringing people who never worked together?
Will they be? What's the answer?
Yes, they would.
You think they will?
I think that for the moment, the direction is a little bit too rigid, and we need to be cautious. But I think that the framework, or general framework conditions are fine, but the devil is in the detail. Different instruments cannot be exactly the same 100% because they are aimed at different things. So let's make sure that we are not throwing the baby with the bathwater and try to align everything 100%. This will not be possible. And for what I'm seeing today, this harmonization across the board is a little bit over the top, to my taste.
Harman, is it okay? All right.
Yeah.
Graça, what do you think? Are the Horizon Europe plans right, or do we need other solutions?
We are trying to address exactly the problems and to improve the problems that we encounter in the Horizon 2020. So I think that Horizon Europe is going to be better than Horizon 2020. I was one of the rapporteurs of the 2020, but probably when I look back, even we have included the teaming, the twinning in the spreading of excellence, the widening was not enough to have a better balanced geographical distribution, and is probably the major question that we need to improve. And it's not easy because we cannot do target calls. We cannot. Our criteria is excellence, and it should continue to be excellence. So, for example, in the EIT for Horizon Europe, that is inside the Horizon Europe, is the major point that we are proposing solutions. And the solutions that we are proposing is based on the more dissemination, more work in these countries where there are underrepresentation. And we are doing something that can help, because most of these countries that are underrepresented on these instruments, they have quite a large regional funds. So we are implementing what we call the regional innovation scheme, that makes the synergies to the regional funds, and through that they start doing all the capacity building. They are already we try to find out the excellent groups, but through this budget, they get stronger in what we Magda's called the ecosystem that and Nicholas talk about this, that after they are competitive to apply and to win proposals in the other scheme. So we are trying to get solutions through the synergies with the regional funds, more information to make the EIT, because the EIT suffers of the same problem that we were discussing here, a lot of concentration in almost all of the KICs, probably more than the collaborative research. So we are also introducing their schemes similar to what we have in the teaming and the twinning on Horizon 2020, so that they can complement when they get a proposal, they can complement with the regional funds for another project, but that is a project that helps them in the infrastructure to perform the work. So there are several solutions that we think could be also applied in the partnerships to have a better balance framework program.
Nicola, what would you want to change? Are you completely happy with the Horizon Europe plans, or what would you want to change?
Well, I don't see the past partnership as having had big problems that we would not solve. I would simply see that the context is evolving, so we need to adapt to a new context, and this new context might be different for each sector. So in our case, we come from being perceived from a quite futuristic technology to being a cornerstone of the climate strategy of the Commission, and therefore we need to deliver. And that changed completely the pressure on us, and that will have a concrete impact on the way the partnership is going to structure, because now a number of other sectors are integrating hydrogen in their strategy. This is the case for clean aviation. This is the case for zero emission waterborne transport. This is the case for 2.0, which is the road transport.
Oh, that sounds like duplication.
But so it's not, there is no, if you want, but the challenge is that the Commission took the decision to propose to distribute the effort of research, not on the production of hydrogen or the distribution, but the end use. It's also true for clean steel, and to distribute the effort in the different partnerships. And one of our biggest challenge will be to have an efficient coordination between these different partnerships. So on the industry side, we are already discussing on a very regular basis with our counterpart trade association. We hope that on the Commission side, there will be also a good coordination so that we can deliver. And it's not solving a previous problem, it's a new challenge that we need to face. And we try to do it the best way we do, but coordination is always challenging.
Okay, Michael, what do you think of the Horizon Europe plans? I mean, I ask you because there is now legislation that's drafted, and part of it under partial agreement, as you know, between the Council, Commission, and Parliament is already done. So the way the program works is going to work is pretty clear already. The big fight is still over money and a few other things, but. So what do you think about the legislation and the plans so far?
Well, I think that in this process we participate by providing our opinions when we are asked, and in some cases we are asked. So we will be able to advise the Parliament and the Councils, the co-legislators, on what elements based on our past experiences would be needed, they would need to embed in the design of the new programs. And I think one of the main advice from our side would be that there are much better performance indicators, measurable, so that they can also be measured as time goes by especially in a long-term project, because there are more and more calls for more performance information from the budgetary authority, and to deliver this I mean, in the programs themselves, these better performance metric should be embedded, and then if it is the case, it would make it much easier to identify where the money actually delivers the intended value, and in which areas maybe there is need to reallocate, redeploy. So this, I think, from the Court of Auditors will always be a call, and especially in the research area where, as I said before, identification of performance, measurement of performance is a challenge in itself.
Can I try one more element, Richard, which is about the global nature of industries and research? Certainly true for other sectors, very, very true for health sector. So I would just like to say there are some risks. So the Court of Auditors, Mihail, had shown some risks for the partnerships. For me, there are some risks from some policy choices that we can make and deprive ourselves of being connected with the global research environment, to close ourselves too much, to close Europe. And I think we really need to make sure that Europe stays connected with the global environment, that we continue seeing all third countries from wherever the data, the progress can come, be connected and attracted to Europe and Europe's programs. For me, that's one of the big challenges. I don't want to say the B word, but that would, of course, influence everything that will happen with third countries and the globalization of research programs. So I would just like to mention this because it's not a trivial problem at all.
Well, I think somebody else mentioned the B word. We got a question. Among the questions that have come in is, how can Horizon Europe be better than Horizon 2020 when there is a huge budget cut?
Be more connected with the global research environment and to attract as much as we can. But I also think that these budget cuts and the discussion, the political discussions about the budget, should look at what are we trying to achieve, and certainly the research budget. Research would so much contribute to post-COVID recovery, would be absolutely part of that. So cutting budgets is unwise, but that we are where we are. It is what it is, as some people say. So I would like to say, just let's be smart in allocation of that much budget that is, and that we allocate it where the ecosystem can be created more resilient and stronger.
Graça, can the Parliament undo this budget cut?
We cannot say that the budget is finalized. We are co-decision in the European budget together with the Council. So until the Parliament approves the budget, there is no final decision on the budget. And as you know, the European Parliament is very much committed and united to increase what we call the future-orientated programs, such as Horizon Europe and Erasmus and the digitalization. So let's hope we are negotiating. So we should not say never that the deal is done. No. Of the partner has not yet approved. We said clearly that we don't like it, and like it is, we will not vote. So we want a better budget.
Okay, Nicola, did you want to come in there?
But maybe make a comment linking what has been said by Grace and by Michael.
And I should say we have just a few minutes left, so go ahead.
Yeah, sure, understood. I think if we start judging partnership on their impact and their performance rather than cost, that's a good sign. It's a good sign. It will take time to adapt, because I think there was a bit of obsession on financial audits and compliance audit in the past. So we need to put the brains at the service of good performance. And there is work to be done there, because performance is not something that you judge easily. Is it whether you had exactly a project which might be the same as the one paid by the German program, or is it that Europe is at the forefront on hydrogen, on medicines, or whatever? This is a bit difficult to judge. And second, then if we want to judge performance and have KPI, then we should be realistic. We need to be a good match between the objective and the budget. You cannot have going to the moon objective and then budget just to kickstart a small car. You need to have a proportion between the two. And that's why sometimes performance is not there simply because the budget is not aligned with the objectives.
Okay. Well, then if we look forward to in the last minute, if we just look briefly ahead to Horizon Europe, Nicolas, your next partnership is larger. How big? Well, you don't know yet, but how big are you hoping it's going to be?
Well, the level of ambition is much higher. What we request is a doubling of the budget. What we will get, I don't know, but I fear a disproportion between the budget we will get and the objective. And asking a doubling while the total budget is not going bigger, I understand that it will be challenging.
Okay, all right, Magda, what's next with IMI?
So as I said, we want to expand and to create a partnership which is multi-sector, medtech and pharma and IT. I can't tell you about the budget because as Nicolas, we don't know. We would like to have a reasonable level that is commensurate with the going to the moon objectives that we have. I think that's all I can say for the moment.
Okay, all right. Michals, what will you be looking for?
Well, I think we'll be looking for the fact that the budget is actually commensurate with objectives. It's one of the basic principles of sound financial management that is also enshrined in the EU treaty. And I think when the budgetary authorities decide on the budget, they should keep this in mind. This is very important.
Okay. And at that, I think we will leave it. So thank you very much all, and thank you for those who sent in questions. See you soon. Science Business will be publishing a report on this event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.